Hey guys, Boston Ramos, and this Sunday, October 16th, the Miami Dolphins will be hosting the Minnesota Vikings for a 4-1, 1-1 on the road. Meanwhile, Dolphins are 3-2, 2-0 at home, and 1 p.m. kickoff as usual at Hard Rock. And it should be fun. Nice 81 degree expected weather, little clouds here and there, but hopefully it could play a favor in the Dolphins because last home game, Dolphins had pretty hot game against the Buffalo Bills. A lot of their fans and team itself were complaining about how hot it was. It's like Dolphins can't control that, but that's part of the home field advantage, and not so much advantage in terms of the match predictor. ESPN has the Vikings favored 65.2%, Dolphins 34.4, a tie at 0.04. Not so much going on there except for the betting lines: -3 for Minnesota, +3 for Dolphins. Money line -160 for the Vikings, 135 +135 for the Dolphins. Over under set at 45.5. And there are a few injuries to discuss. One of them is Tua. He's back in terms of practicing, but I wouldn't say he's clear to play because he's listed as out. He cleared the concussion protocols, but is not expected to play. And glad to hear that he's cleared the concussion protocols, and want to see him, get back on the field as soon as possible. But at the same time, you want to just let this thing go at its own pace and just let him come back when he can. Austin Jackson still on injured reserve. Who else? Keelan Carter still on injured reserve. Byron Jones is listed as out. And then Teron Armstead is questionable, still with the toe injury. Elijah Campbell, safety, is questionable. Raheem Mostert, knee, is questionable. Durham Smythe, questionable for hamstring injury. And Kader Kohu is doubtful. So no clear specification on his injury, but for the time being, that's all we know. And then for the Minnesota Vikings, we have B.C. Johnson, wide receiver. He's on injured reserve. DJ Woonan, a linebacker. He is out. Who else? Ty Chandler, running back, is on injured reserve with a thumb injury. Ben Elston, tight end, is still on injured reserve with a groin injury. Lewis Sine, former Miami Cane safety, he's on injured reserve with a leg injury. That's not my bad, not my former Miami guy. He's a Georgia guy, my bad. Blake Porrell, wide receiver, he's listed as out with an injury. Thomas Finnegan, wide receiver, is on injured reserve. Kenny Wilkes, defensive end, is on injured reserve. And Alexander Madison, running back, is questionable. Those are the injuries listed here for the Minnesota Vikings. So those are all the injuries. Some things we want to talk about is the fact that the Dolphins are 3-2. Kind of where we expected them to be, just not expected the losses that the Dolphins were handed throughout the first 5 games of the year. And I know I said I was going to make a kind of like quarter of the season review. I'm just going to do kind of a half season review at the bye, and then another one after the final home regular season game. Hopefully there'll be more games after that, but if that's the case, just a whole season review at that point. But yeah, those are how we're going to go with the reviews, just because I feel like there's not enough yet to really talk about on this team, except for some things here and there, which I will definitely try to bring up throughout the season, just make more of a talking point on those things. But as of right now, not much to say in terms of how the season's going so far. Yes, you have 2 big wins against the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills, but then you have 2 big losses to the Cincinnati Bengals and New York Jets. At that point, you're 3-0. I understand what happened in Cincinnati, and I understand what happened in New York, but still, you want to go into those games and come out of those games with wins. That being said, the Minnesota Vikings have had a pretty good season, 4-1 up to this point. They lost. Their only loss is to the Philadelphia Eagles, who are undefeated. So, not much of a performance from them in that game. They lost 24-7, but still, every other game they've won, and it's been close games for the most part. Green Bay's the only game that was 23-7. Aside from that, a 1-possession game in each and every win. So that's the thing about this Minnesota Vikings team. They've been able to win games, especially close ones. More so that they start, losing a lead, like letting a team come back into the game. So be on the lookout for that if Minnesota does get ahead. Minnesota is averaging 23 points, just the same as the Miami Dolphins. They're allowing about 20 points, though. Meanwhile, Dolphins are allowing 26.2. Within the last 2 weeks, that number has definitely, gone up. Total yards for the Minnesota Vikings, 374. Dolphins, 361. Passing, just about the same, 272 for the Vikings, 278 for the Dolphins. Rushing is where Minnesota has an edge, 101 yards rushing, 82 yards rushing for the Dolphins. And then yards allowed, Minnesota has a bit of better numbers there, same as the passing game. Same as the offensive game with 383 yards allowed. Dolphins allowing 400. Passing yards for Minnesota, 262. Dolphins 290. And Minnesota allowing 120 rush yards, which is interesting to see. Meanwhile, Dolphins are allowing 110. So we already gone through the injuries. We already gone through kind of what these teams have been going through so far this season through the first 5 games. Now let's talk about how the Miami Dolphins can win this game. This is a common theme, but it's pretty much bread and butter with how to win in the NFL. Put pressure on Kirk Cousins. A lot of teams have successfully done it in the past. As so far this year, they've been able to get pressure on him, but still not getting the results that a lot of them want, except for the Philadelphia Eagles, obviously. But yeah, putting pressure on Kirk Cousins, because this receiving core and this offense by Minnesota is one that you don't really want to mess with, because they can run the ball, they can pass the ball, and they can just make things happen just by getting the ball into the playmaker's hands. So if you can limit the quarterback, huge win for the Dolphins in terms of defensive standpoint. Now, you also got to worry about the running game for Minnesota with Dalvin Cook, and Alexander Mattison isn't no slouch either. So just staying home on the runs and making sure you could limit them getting into open space. A couple yard carries here and there, that's fine. Do not allow them to break out for big runs, because that's when they feel like, okay, we have the confidence to open up our playbook a bit, and that's when they start slinging the ball around to guys like Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and KJ Osborne, stuff like that. So that's a former Miami guy, former Miami Hurricane. Anyhow, so I feel like it starts with either pressuring Kirk Cousins and bringing him down to the ground, or slowing down the running game with Dalvin Cook at the helm, because once you start doing that, things will be better in terms of trying to make stops defensively. Bright side, Xavier Howard came back from his groin injury. Hopefully doesn't re-aggravate it again. And I was thinking about it the other day. I'm like, man, why didn't Xavier Howard play it against the Jets? He's probably forward thinking about this big matchup against the Minnesota Vikings. If the Dolphins can get a win here, that would be huge in terms of pushing themselves forward along the season, because right now you don't want to end up at 3-3 after starting off 3-0. I know it's circumstances that the Dolphins are facing, but still you want to put your best foot out there and hopefully lead your team to a win. So that's why I assume the Dolphins were thinking when they're like, okay, Xavier Howard, let's shut you down for the Jets game. No shade at the Jets, but just saying that the Minnesota Vikings have a good receiving core, and you want to have your best corner out there to help defend against them. So that's my foresight on that. But offensively, Skylar Thompson is getting the start. Teddy has been cleared to play. He's no longer in the concussion protocol. But Skylar Thompson's already named the starter, which I think is good on the Dolphins end. You don't want to, have the similar situation that happened from the Bills game then to the Bengals game happen again with Teddy Bridgewater, just in case. Just let it be. You already have everyone breathing down your neck. Let's not just make the situation way worse than it already is. And let's give Skylar a shot. I think he did good against the Jets. I think lack of preparation in terms of he never really got time with the starters last week. And then on top of that, rookie jitters type of seeing things in the NFL for the first time is a lot different than what they were in preseason when everything was kind of very vanilla. But let's see what the Dolphins can do with Skylar Thompson at the helm. I saw a funny picture of it's like a Game of Thrones type of edit, and it was Skylar Thompson with a cheetah and a penguin, and he was wearing the stuff that Brandon, the guy who is the Raven, I believe, in the show. And I just thought it was funny. Anyhow, I just want to see him have success there. So rooting for him to do good. So I think it's possible, yes. Am I a little doubtful? A little bit. But you want to see things happen before you can start believing. And I've seen glimpses here and there. I just feel like he just needs to deal with the pressure a little bit better. But it's a little bit scary with this Minnesota defense, who's pretty well. But aside from that, got the running game going. We got it going last week against the New York Jets. Raheem Mostert did break 100 yards, which I was very pleased to see. Obviously, in a losing effort, wasn't glad about, but saw it happen. It looked good. Want to see more of that this week. Try to kill the clock as much as possible, especially if somehow the Dolphins get in some type of lead. Just try to get out of the game as soon as possible, limit injuries, and try to put up points. I think last week only scoring 17 points was a little bit of an embarrassment for the Dolphins offense, but you also got to consider the situations that have happened. That's about it. They were able to bring themselves back in the game, and then just things got out of hand last week. So as long as they can avoid that, that'll be very good. Because Minnesota has survived a lot of these close games, but eventually at some point they got to give one up, and it could possibly very much be this week. So we'll see what happens, but kudos to the Minnesota Vikings, 4-1 so far. A lot of people probably wouldn't have had them there, especially myself, but a lot of people wouldn't have had the Dolphins at 3-2 either. So it is what it is. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.